listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Damn Podcast. I am your host, Angie Machado. Joined with me is Jake Hedberg, as always. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing pretty well. You know, the sun was shining in Corvallis last weekend. It was a pretty fun weekend.
It was good. And I wish you guys could see. I need to look at Jake, but that little intro music plays, and I'm like dancing. So it always pumps me up. Sunshine was great in Corvallis. We are like full on spring mode right now. I know you have Mom's Weekend coming up in what, 2 weeks? No, next week. Next weekend. And then right after that is Shasta weekend. They still do Shasta?
Oh yeah.
Jake smile. If you're listening on the pod, Jake's smile might be the biggest smile I've seen him make. So yeah, that's coming up. But we are full on spring. Spring football just wrapped up on Saturday with the annual spring showcase, and we are kind of in full on baseball and recruiting mode. So I know Jake is kind of switching gears now from spring practice to recruiting. We got you over 2,000 followers on Twitter last night, so that was awesome too. But the show today, we are going to talk football. Obviously, we're going to talk some baseball and kind of the ups and downs that the OSU baseball team is having right now. And then we have mailbag questions from Beaver Blitz. So we are going to jump on and answer some of those questions. But let's just jump in and talk spring football. It hasn't been a boring couple days either after that spring game. What were your overall thoughts and takeaways from the spring game?
I thought the offense struggled. You know, the quarterback play wasn't to the level we've seen in recent years. I thought the quarterbacks and receivers both had a rough day. Giovanni McCoy had his struggles. Jabari Johnson had his struggles. Obviously didn't see Ben Gilbranson. I was really impressed with the Oregon State defense. However, I thought the front seven of that defense, coming into spring ball, I had concerns. The defensive line lost their top four guys, both starting inside backers gone, all three outside linebackers gone. I thought Oregon State's defense dominated the offense really the whole camp, and Saturday was kind of the exclamation point of that.
Yeah, so and that's what you saw all spring. All the practices you were able to go to, that's what we saw. Now, I want to talk a little bit, not just from the game itself, but there was a lot of criticism from the media about I don't even know what, right? I didn't take the time to read a lot of the whole stories from some of the I think some of it. I actually walked away. My initial thought from the spring game as a whole, like the whole picture, I actually thought, hey, Beaver fans are going to be pretty happy. They played a game. This is the first time we've actually seen a semblance of a game. And I say game in air quotes, but they actually made it look like football instead of just drills. I thought the atmosphere was good. We watched from Beaver Street, right along one of the little drink rails, stood there talking to fans. I actually thought it wasn't, I walked away kind of like, wow, okay, that wasn't bad. And then I go and read Orem and Canzano, who basically thought it was a missed opportunity. What was your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely fun to experience a game from Beaver Street. That was my first time down there during a game, and I thought it was a pretty cool area. It's spring football. It's not going to get, it's not going to be a sellout. Obviously there could have been more fans there, but at the end of the day, I don't really think it's that big of a deal. I mean, Oregon State could have made it a bigger deal, but they really didn't advertise it a whole time. And I don't know, like even as a student, like it wasn't very well known about that there was an actual
game. Practice. I mean, I want to insert Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice. Yeah. And so I feel like Oregon State is damned if they do, damned if they don't. So for years now, we've had this kind of not healthy enough. Jonathan Smith just kind of runs a practice and there's drills going on and they might do a little thud here and there. This year, they actually kind of have a game and then people are still complaining. So I don't know. I mean, this is the Northwest. This is the West Coast. I mean, I watched a lot of, I saw bits and pieces of USC and Cal, and nobody had a huge crowd. So anyway, I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. So strengths, obviously defense. Weaknesses, are you how DEFCON are you worried about the offense right now? Are you like full on panic mode, or are you feeling like summer, some of the guys healthy? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in full on panic mode yet, but at this point, there's definitely room for concern. The quarterbacks, the passing game has struggled. I do feel like this summer is a good opportunity for the quarterbacks to gel. I mean, Jabari Johnson was hurt for a while. He didn't really have time to throw to his receivers before spring camp started. And the summer provides that opportunity for Johnson, McCoy, Gilbranson to kind of gel with these newer receivers. If you look at Oregon State's receiving room from last year to what it is this year, Trent Walker had 5 catches last year. Jeremiah Noga had 8 catches last year. David Wells had a single catch last year. Zach Card had 5. That's just about all that's back. My East had a couple, and then you bring in Darius Clemens. There's a lot of new faces that haven't thrown with these quarterbacks, and it's going to take time, and hopefully this summer kind of changes the miscommunications and the timing errors and gets Oregon State's offense back on the right track before August 31st.
Yeah, so we have a comment going back to kind of the spring game. Clint Moses, article I read said our AD should have rallied the crowd, no alumni NFL players, and didn't sell out Reeser. Okay, Oregon State has not sold out Reeser for a spring game ever.
Yeah, in my recollection, there's never been more than 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 fans.
Yeah, it's never been a sellout. It's practice we're talking. And then the NFL, I did notice that, but NFL guys have been back kind of throughout spring.
Tolly was back today.
Yeah, they did have Tolly and Catan were there. But yeah, Brandon Cooks I know was there earlier.
Ron Ward. Yeah,
there were some guys that were back earlier. So, but no, as far as the sellout goes, that never happened. So I'm not super concerned about that. Let's see. We have another comment. See King 2013, exactly what Jake said. Lots to catch up on, but these quarterbacks and receivers have the summer and fall to get timing down. So I know we didn't see a lot of Jabari Johnson. He was in a boot for the first half of spring. Mm-hmm. They eased him back in the second half. Really what we saw of him on Saturday was the first pretty much live that we had seen from him.
Yeah.
Do you right now, if I had to say who's your starter game one, would you say Johnson? McCoy?
Well, to me, there's two ways to look at it. There's either the way to win now, which I feel like Giovanni McCoy and Ben Gilbranson are the best bets, or to build for the future, because the drop-off between Jabari Johnson and Giovanni McCoy and Ben Gilbranson at this point, it's not too far, but the ceiling of Jabari Johnson, in my mind at least, is drastically higher than both Gilbranson and Giovanni McCoy. So if Oregon State wants to get Jabari Johnson out there, there may be some early season hiccups, but it may pay dividends towards the end of the season and then carrying over into 2025 and 26.
The running game too. So Uncle Filthy on YouTube, Jam looked good and put on weight. So did Hankerson. He's going to be trouble. Okay.
Yeah, I love Hankerson.
Fans, this is the first time fans have seen, now that Damian Martinez is out of the picture, I think fans got to look at why maybe you and I were not super. I mean, yes, you lose a great runner in Damian, but Jam and Hankerson are going to be trouble.
Yeah, I think Oregon State's backfield with those two plus Jake Reichel, and at this point, unless Oregon State adds another guy through the portal, I would expect one of their two true freshmen, Cornell Hatcher or Sala Ala, to play in like a rotational role of sorts. But Jam Griffin and Hankerson are both very good backs. One thing that stood out to me during the spring game and really kind of throughout all of camp has been their increased usage in the screen game. That's something Oregon State hasn't seen since Trey Lowe, which has been 2-3 seasons now, and prior to him, it had been a while. So expect a lot more of that because that fits their skill sets a ton.
Yeah, and Connor King says, I'm cautious comparing Hankerson to Quiz, but he has the same shiftiness and low center of gravity. And that is what you've said all spring, Jake.
I mean, just physically, like the way he looks out there just reminds me of Jaquiz Rogers. Obviously not saying he's going to be as good as Jaquiz because he was one of the greatest.
It's Quiz Rogers, yeah.
It's Quiz Rogers, but man, he sure reminds me of him a lot. Like the first time I saw him, I was like, wow, that looks like Quiz.
Yeah, no, there's just like you said, the body style, the running style. So no, I agree. I hear a lot of fans. I hear some media kind of wringing their hands about the offense and the struggles. Now, I would be way more concerned if the offense won the day on Saturday because the defense needs to be ahead of the game. Yeah. Remember too, offensively, they don't want to show anything. They want nothing on film. So that's going to be
pretty vanilla in my mind. Like there's been some stuff at practices that we've seen that they kept quiet, they didn't show, and I think that's going to be. I mean, I think that was a smart play by the offensive staff and Trent Bray because there's nothing on this offense now, or I guess up until Saturday there was no tape on this offense, and there's wrinkles that still aren't on tape that opposing defenses won't be able to prepare for.
Yeah, and you think you have to keep it as you don't want any film out there, especially up to that November or that September 14th game with Oregon.
Yeah, exactly. That was the exact same point I was about to make, especially when your toughest games are earlier in the season, like the Portlands, the Portlands, the Purdues, the Oregons, the Cals, all in the first 5 weeks of the season. Those are in my opinion, three of your four toughest games. So keeping the film availability low until those games are crucial because it's going to be tough for opposing defensive coordinators to prepare for an offense that they haven't seen.
Yeah, and that's like I said. I see the reason for concern. Yes.
Yeah, totally.
But this is what the offseason's for, and this is where the quarterbacks, receivers need to come together on the same page. Start really working hard on the routes. And people I've talked to too close to the program, it's a whole new system too. So it's still learning a lot of the terminology. There were three offensive linemen are still out with injury. There's lots of guys sitting out. So I don't take what we saw this spring as any more than it's practice. It's really kind of getting their feet wet on this whole new system. So like I said, fall is always a better indicator, but I just wanted to get your take on that. I thought we were kind of on the same page, but do you like the new scheme that you've seen from offense?
Yeah, it's definitely something new because there's certain wrinkles, there's certain aspects of the offense that I haven't seen Oregon State run before, and I've seen other programs use it fairly successfully. So it's exciting to see that being carried over into the Oregon State playbook, and hopefully the success it's had during practice at times translates onto the field on Saturdays.
So let's talk a little bit about wide receivers. You mentioned the guy. There's not a lot of returning production there.
No.
Right now, just who is your starting three right now if you were to have to pick?
Yeah, so the slot position, Jeremiah Noga appears to have that locked down. Jalen Holmes, a shifty, quicker guy. He's pushing him, as is Jordan Anderson, the true freshman, who I thought had a pretty solid season. And then at the two outside spots, I think Darius Clemens, if fully healthy, should have one of those two spots. And then the other, many expected Jimmy Valson to take that spot, but at this point, he will not be ready for the start of the season. Not sure if we'll see him at all, even in 2024. So Trent Walker and David Wells are the two guys that took first-team reps at the two outside spots. I think those two are going to battle it out. Regardless of which one of those two start, I feel like they're both play a lot. I'm leaning towards Walker having the spot right now just because of experience. Very sure-handed, doesn't drop any balls. Is a pretty good receiver, great route runner. And then David Wells is a higher potential guy who could potentially overtake Trent Walker. Still remains to be seen. And then behind those three, Zach Card has the ability to take a top off of a defense. He might be one of the fastest players I've ever seen play at Oregon State. His speed's insane. He'll definitely be a deep threat. And I feel like this from April to August is going to be big for Zach Card to try and develop the route tree because right now he's got the deep ball.
Yeah, he's got the go route down.
He's got the go route down, but there's room to grow in kind of the shorter, the intermediate routes, and if Card can get that down, then he'll be scary.
Wait, so Jake, I'm going to go back because you've been with Beaver Blitz now just 13 months. But do you remember your first practice?
Yeah,
in the indoor and Childs to Card, and it seriously was probably
wow.
It was pretty.
Yeah,
it was pretty.
That was the best ball ever seen thrown at Oregon State.
But a great catch too. So yes, Card is one to watch. We're gonna talk about the new guys that we have coming on campus in June, but let's talk defense a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's the strength. I know we've seen some guys step up. Defense looks pretty solid. What needs work right now?
I feel like building depth. The secondary is pretty good, but the inside backers, there's depth. Outside backers, there's depth concerns. The defensive line is really, while it's looked good, the whole rotation is kind of unknown. There's, in my mind, 6 or 7 guys that are all battling out. It'll be interesting to see how that rotation plays out. And then the linebacker depth, John Miller just transferred. I thought Aiden Sullivan had a very solid camp as the third inside backer. And then Jarice Goodman just joined the team 3 weeks ago. 2
weeks ago. Yeah.
Something like that. And I thought he had a solid start. There's still a ton of room to grow as he's just now learning the system. And I would like to see a better interior pass rush. I feel like the Oregon State edges between Nico Taylor, Oluwatoshu, Thomas Collins, they all got into the backfield consistently on Saturday, but the interior guys weren't necessarily applying pressure in terms of the passing game.
Okay. So, and then Takari Hickle, which he was injured last week. We 2 weeks. We have heard we expect that to be a longer term deal. So transfer portal right now is open. From what I've heard, Oregon State will be looking for an O-line, an edge rusher, and a tight end. Where else do you see them needing to fill some holes?
I could see them potentially going after another running back just in terms of depth. Oregon State only has 4 scholarship backs now, 2 on campus and then 2 joining in June. But if they feel like Hatcher and all are better suited taking a redshirt year, then maybe they potentially bring in a guy to kind of take Isaiah Newell's role as that third back. I wouldn't be shocked if they brought in a receiver with the potential of Jimmy Valson being out for a while. And then, offensive line. I feel like tight end is a crucial spot as well as his defensive end, like the defensive end, outside backer, that spot.
So what transfers, the guys that were already on campus, what transfers made the biggest statement in your opinion?
I thought Kobe Singleton really showed out. I thought he balled out. He started off camp taking second team reps from behind Andre Jordan, who also had a really solid camp. But, it's hard to keep an NFL caliber guy off the field, and that's what Kobe Singleton is. He was super impressive. He has 9 or 10 career interceptions at Southern Utah and Liberty. And I think between Jaden Robinson and Kobe Singleton, Oregon State has a very good cornerback duo. And then on the offensive side of the ball, I thought Van Wells was the best transfer. Really a guy who was one of the better pass blockers in the Pac-12 last season. And the one constant throughout all of camp was Van Wells at the center spot. Grant Stark and Van Wells were the only 2 that took reps just with the first team. But Stark was all over line, right tackle, right guard. I think we saw him at left tackle even. Whereas Van Wells was locked in at center. He took every single first rep. And Josh Gray and Stark obviously have starting jobs locked up, but we don't really know what spot yet. So Van Wells at center is the one locked up spot on this Oregon State offensive line.
So I'm looking at the enrollees too. So then 2 preps that entered with Jordan Anderson and Exodus Ayers. I think Exodus Ayers is one too to watch.
Yeah.
To break the 2 deep.
I wouldn't be shocked. I have a offensive and defensive depth chart coming out next week, and Exodus is on there. So
I just think he made, but like you said, Aiden Sullivan was one, and I actually think that is one of the reasons we saw John Miller jump in the portal yesterday when he did, because I think Aiden Sullivan now has jumped him on the depth chart at the middle linebacker. Okay, let's talk now about. I know a lot of we have all this attention in December about the guys that signed letters of intent, and then everybody forgets about them, and then they show up in June, and everybody kind of doesn't pay much attention. It's June, and they're either talking baseball or their summer vacations, and then all of a sudden it's August, and people are like, "Wait, who are these people we're talking about?" So there's a couple of guys I do want to highlight because I do think that they could make an impact. Malachi Durant, wide receiver out of Graham Capsawin, coming in June. 6'2", 160 is what he's listed at. Do you think he could make a play at the wide receiver spot?
Yeah, I certainly do. I think he was Oregon State's most talented prep. I think he's the most ready to contribute right away physically. And Oregon State's got playing time available at the receiver spots, particularly the outside spots. And Durant is a guy who I think is going to come in from day one and compete. Holding on to Durant and Ayers were I thought Oregon State's two biggest recruiting wins because there were bigger name schools pushing for them. I know Exis Ayers, he had an SEC school pushing for him as well as Michigan State. Mm-hmm. Same with Durant. And again, Oregon State looks to be pivoting away from those 5'9", 5'10" outside receivers and moving forward with a 6'3" Darius Clemens, a 6'1" Trent Walker, a 6'1" Wells, and then a 6'2" Malachi Durant. So excited to see how Durant looks physically in person come August, but based off everything I've seen on tape and heard, he could be a special one.
Yeah, and then we've talked about the running backs in Sala, Hadeen Alla, and Cornell Hatcher. I think both those guys could potentially be freshman contributors. Dexter Foster, I think, probably needs to put some weight on.
Yeah, Chad Bray's high on him though.
But he very high on him.
Late bloomer.
Yeah, and then a couple of the Dylan Sikorsky has huge upside, offensive lineman. But as far as like guys that could come in, I really do think it's going to be. You're looking at Durant and then the two running backs.
I think Foster could even push for time.
Yeah, because he's super raw is what I've been told. So then I look. We kind of skimmed over the transfer guys, the guys that are here, but you touched on. Darius Clemens is one that we haven't seen all spring.
Yeah, still haven't seen him.
So he is expected to be ready to go in the fall. I think he just had his knee cleaned up a little bit. Tavita Pomey out of Oregon, interior defensive lineman. We saw some of him this spring. Kobe Singleton, you talked about. Sai Badrale. Heidi Hill. Lots of names here. There's been some. Gerard Christian Lichtenhand goes by Tank. He was actually at spring game. He walked by when we were doing interviews, and he's tall. He's a big kid. Nick Norris, Mason White. A lot of names. It's going to be a whole new look roster, but I think you've kind of got. We're starting to see it shape up, and like I said, next week on Beaver Blitz, you will have your way too early look at the two deep. Do anything else you want to add about football? Anything that just stood out or?
No, there's still going to be a ton of roster movement. The team that, in today's day and age, it's really rare to see a team stay the same from after spring ball to fall ball. And, we've seen 5 guys in the last 3 days transfer out. I think that's right, 5.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be some more as well. An Oregon State is going to add a few guys as well. So the movements isn't done. Get ready to see some more new faces in Corvallis as well come August.
We have Connor King says in the comments, I hate NLI agents. I get you, Connor, but I think I think there's a difference here. There's a difference in the guys that are leaving right now after spring camp because they're looking now for opportunity. Mm-hmm. They are buried on the depth chart. They've been having their wrap up meetings with the coaching staff. So a lot of these guys are moving and entering the portal because they're looking for playing time that they're not necessarily going to find at Oregon State. So I hear you, but not. These recent ones are not. I don't think NIL
No.
reasons. It's an interesting dynamic now that these guys can transfer so many times without penalty. In that, and I was talking to some parents during the spring game, some player parents who it makes it difficult for fans. It makes it difficult for coaches because fans don't know who kids are anymore. It used to be you had 3, 4, 5 years, and it's harder for a team to gel. If you're constantly a revolving door and musical chairs, new guys in, new guys out, it makes it way more difficult to A, know what you need exactly, and then B, kind of, the days of building a program, developing players is gone by the wayside.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're seeing guys enter the portal after the regular season and then transfer again after spring ball. I mean, that's 3 schools in 6 months, if even sometimes 3 schools in 3 months. Like I couldn't imagine going from, Oregon State in the fall to Michigan State in the winter and then going, oh, I want to go play at Tennessee in the spring. Like I could not imagine that. It's to me, it's crazy. Like 3 schools in 3 semesters is pretty wild.
Yeah. And like I said, so not only they don't have time to even learn the system,
No.
but coaches don't even know anymore what they have. I mean, they're taking flyers on guys just thinking that maybe they could fit in. And then I don't know. It's nutty. It's crazy. Hopefully it will start sorting itself out here pretty soon. But all I know is we're covering Oregon State. We cover the guys that are at Oregon State. Jake's doing a phenomenal job with recruiting. So that's what's next, right, Jake? So now we're entering May, which the coaches will be hitting the road recruiting. And then also official visits actually start this next month in June.
Yep. The first weekend of May, official start.
Yeah. So it's never downtime. So it's getting a little crazy. Uncle Filthy Jake wants to know, how many scholarships are we over? I don't think we're over anymore.
No, with Dylan Lopez's departure this morning, per my count, we're at 84. Although Jack Conant and Trent Walker may be on scholarship now. Don't know that for sure, but they're both walk-ons who should are talented enough to be on scholarship. So assuming they aren't, Oregon State's at 84, but they could be at the limit or one over.
Okay, great info. We are going to take a quick break just for ads for the actual podcast side, but then we'll be back to talk some baseball and some damn questions. Make sure to stick with Beaver Blitz for all your latest from surrounding Oregon State athletics, including transfer portal recruiting and the actual game-by-game analysis and insight. No one has you covered like beaverblitz.com. Okay, welcome back to the damn podcast. Okay, we just talked a bunch of football. Spring football is done and over. We have a pretty good idea, I think, of where things stand right now. Jake will be releasing the depth charts next week. We have some other analysis pieces that will be coming out kind of sprinkled here in the next couple weeks. But it really focus shifts to recruiting. And that's where Jake and I will be focusing our attention with football recruiting and baseball. So baseball has had a couple rough outings, Jake. I think that's, I don't know, when you lose a game that you had a huge lead and you lose it in the bottom of the 9th because you walk in a run. Ouch, Jake. Ouch. Talk me off the ledge.
I mean,
what is going on with the pitching?
There's certainly areas for concern. I mean, the way Oregon State's performed over the last weekend doesn't look like a team that's capable of winning a national championship. I think the bullpen has had its issues, but more of a bigger picture issue, I feel like, is the defense is committing errors that we have really grown accustomed to not seeing at Oregon State. I feel like the loss of Darwin Barney as a coach, that's a gold glover right there. He won a few, I think, and his impact on the team in terms of, the infield fielding balls, I feel like that's been lacking this year. There's been very uncharacteristic mistakes by experienced stars like Travis Bazzana, Elijah Hainline, Guerra's had a couple as well, and that's concerning at this point. I mean, Oregon State's 2 months into the season that they played 41 games, 40 games, um, and they're making February and early March type mistakes, and that needs to be fixed by the time the Pac-12 tournament comes around. Otherwise, it'd be surprising to see Oregon State make it to Omaha. Now, I think Oregon State's capable of it. If they clean things up, if they dial in the pitching staff, then I feel like this team's a national championship contender. But it needs to be addressed. And I thought last night's game was good to get the monkey off of their back. Snapping a 4-game slide probably has never felt any bit better than that. And hopefully they can carry the momentum over into what is going to be a tough Civil War series this weekend.
Yeah. So most likely, I mean, I don't think they have their national seed.
Not top 8 at
Not
this
top
point.
8. Hopefully they can salvage and host.
Division I baseball just posted their field of 64 predictions about an hour ago, and they had Oregon State as the number 12th overall seed, hosting Texas Tech, UConn, and Fresno State, matched up against Kentucky in the Lexington regional, which would be a tough poll. But
that would be a very tough poll.
That would be the potential super regional,
and that's hard. I mean, so
tough place to play.
So this, I mean, yeah, it's not going to get easier. The Arizona series
that's going to be a tough one too.
The Oregon series is going to be tough, and then 2 non-conference Oregon games? Is that right?
Just one this year.
Okay.
And that's next Tuesday.
Okay,
so it's right after the series.
I mean, so we've seen base running errors, we've seen fielding errors, but what about the bullpen? What is going on? I mean, we have a question here. Wait, where was it? Asking, do we need a new pitching coach? That was Brandon Howren. Do we need a new pitching coach? Bullpen is a mess and way too many walks and hit by pitches.
Yeah, I mean, the walks have been an issue, and the bullpen, outside of a few select guys, Bridger Holmes, Kellen Oaks, Kyle Scott, when healthy, I believe he may be injured again, as we didn't see him last week, which is concerning. And then Joey Munt. Outside of those 4 guys, there's really been a ton of walks, blown leads, and it's an area for concern, because realistically, Aiden May, Jacob Kamatz, Eric Segura, Jaron Hunter, whoever else may be starting, they won't be able to go 6, 7, 8 innings every game come the NCAA tournament. And Oregon State needs to have a bullpen that can protect those leads, because
no lead is safe now.
At this point, Oregon State blew a lead last Sunday, or tied. They blew a tie against Stanford 2 Sundays ago. Walked off on wins lead on Sunday. That's 5 out of their last 7 games now. Those games have come on blown leads, and it's not the first time. Oregon State was up 9 runs on Utah, I guess a month ago now, and they blew that one. So it's concerning. I mean, granted, injuries are playing a factor. We haven't seen AJ Lowry in about 2 months now. Kyle Scott appears to be banged up. Haven't seen Aiden Jimenez all season. Leif Palmer's just starting to get back up to full speed, and the start of that it's been a rough start for Palmer, but hopefully the bullpen can right the ship and kind of turn around into the right direction and get this team rolling.
So Connor asked, do they have a shot at getting back to a top 8?
Yeah.
Do they have to win every remaining series?
I think they have a shot. I mean, I do think they would probably have to win every series left to get back in the top 8. And
maybe some help from somebody.
Yeah, I mean, Oregon State does have 2 series against ranked opponents left, and I feel like that can't be understated. I mean, the Beavers haven't played a ranked team since February 21st.
Yeah.
It's been over 2 months.
Yeah.
And I feel like it'll be a good test to see how this team stacks up compared to other, top teams in the country.
So do you think some of the angst around baseball right now do you think it's because this team was really projected to go far, or do you think some of it is the fact that Oregon State has it seems like Oregon State just keeps getting kicked? And
Yeah, I do feel like it's there's a lot of emotions right now with, the transfer portal in terms of women's basketball, transfer portal with football, lack of a conference, and I feel like all that's kind of carrying over. And what Oregon State baseball has given Oregon State fans the last 15, 20 years has been consistent success. And I feel like, granted, it was just a 4-game slide, that it kind of flipped a switch. Oregon State friends were like, oh, like even baseball, and it just kind of, the emotions from the other sports just kind of piled over and just turned on to baseball, where, I mean, it's baseball. Like, you're not going to win every single game. Like, I mean, Oregon State still is one of the best 10, 15 records in the entire country.
it's the way they're losing, though, Jake.
Yeah,
it's
it is the way they're losing. And I know it's frustrating, but I do feel like some of it's like the angst is warranted, but I feel like it's partially
amplified because
yes, exactly.
I mean,
I was trying to find
like
the
Connor
words,
said, it's kind of the last chance though
yeah,
for
I
Oregon
mean,
State
it
to win a
is.
championship before the Pac-12 changes for good in August.
I mean,
I do think but is that fair then to put all that weight on baseball?
No, it's not fair. It's just the way of, it's just the situation Oregon State's in. It's not fair, but it's just the way it is.
When we started talking about this preseason, you and I both said this team, as long as they had pitching, had the shot to be one of the best teams we've seen.
And they're not fully healthy right now. Micah McDowell, Brady Casper, Trent Caraway. That's three of their three
Caraway's
guys.
3 weeks out? Is that what we're hearing?
2 to 3.
2 to 3, okay.
2 to 3. I would imagine Arizona series, they'll probably ease him back into the lineup, and then hopefully the Pac-12 tournament, he's full go. That's kind of what my gut's telling me is going to happen. But again, like, those are 3 of the guys who are anticipated to be 3. It's like 3 of your top 6 players coming into the season who have been banged up. And I really don't think Casper's fully healthy right now. He's not at the same health level as he was at the start of the season at all. And then Travis as well with his the wrist. This could be an issue as well. So it's, things happen. Guys get banged up. Oregon State's just got to push through it, get healthy, and get ready for June.
Great stuff. Player of the season so far. You going with Bazana?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty hard to choose everyone or choose anyone except Travis. He's been consistently Oregon State's best player all season long. Home run record, he's 2 away from tying Jim Wilson's single season record. He should reach that, assuming he stays healthy. A guy that's really impressed me has been Wilson Weber. He was struggling. He dealt with injuries. Coming into the Gonzaga series, he was batting .095, but he just flipped the switch, and he's been raking. It's been great to watch that, because the catcher spot has really lacked offensive productivity since Adley Rutschman's left. And I feel like Weber's producing the best Oregon State's seen since then, at least in terms of offensively.
Yeah. But you're right. Travis, so far, player of the season. But Wilson Weber has been a complete bright spot.
He has.
Just in I say dark time, but it's been a little rough here the past week or so with baseball. But they have some big games. If they can't get up for Oregon this week and Arizona coming up, then bigger issues there. Yeah. So
I mean, as soon as everyone gets healthy, it's like, what do you do with this lineup? Because there's so many guys that are hitting well. I mean, at the catcher, You have Weber at first base, Guerra, Craig, and obviously Travis at second, Elijah Heinlein at short. Third base, Guerra, Caraway, Trotsky even potentially. In the outfield, you got Gavin Turley, Casper, McDowell. Dallas Macias has been tearing things up. Cannon Reeder as well. Talt's batting 380. It's like there's so many guys. Like it's going to be interesting to see how Coach Cannon, Coach Gibson kind of tweak the lineup once everyone's fully healthy, because there's going to be some talented guys that have been really just raking that won't be starting.
Yeah, I mean, Hainline's another one that's had a really solid year.
9 home runs now.
Is that what he's up to 9?
After last night.
Crazy. I know I haven't updated the home run tracker.
Got 22 to go. 22 to go
to hit the 100.
They got 14 games left, I believe, at least in the regular season. So it's looking good.
It's looking good. Do you want to do some damn questions?
Sure.
We open up the mailbag? Okay. I feel like we need like a song for the damn questions. Okay, so Gordon B0717 says, you are king for a day and can make one of the following 2 choices. Which are you choosing? Okay, number 1, the Beavs use the quote-unquote war chest of money to buy their way into a Power 4 conference at a fractional share that produces $18 million in annual media rights distribution. Okay? Or the Beavs use the quote-unquote war chest of money to try and ball on a budget and make it to 2030-ish when the next round of realignment will hopefully include them.
This is a tough call. To me, I feel like you've got to be in the power level for Oregon State to sustain, even though it's a smaller share.
Yeah, but do you lose all your negotiating power?
That's true. I forgot
if you just join, let's just say you just join Big 12.
Yeah.
Do you lose? I don't know. This is a really good question.
If you keep the negotiating power, then obviously the first one. But if you lose it, I'd go with the second option. To me, it just comes down to having
if you just say, we'll take our money and we're not part of the Pac-2 anymore, Pac-12, I don't know. It's tough.
But
if you are trying to play on a budget for the next, 6 years, you may have a skeleton of a program left. So I don't know. Jump Drive. What is the status of Coach Ruick? He's still in Corvallis. I
saw him the other day. Yep.
Some teams were courting him. I heard that he actually did interview with a couple schools. But as of now, we have not heard anything. So, and he's in Corvallis. So.
Saw him walking in front of our place last week, 2 weeks ago.
I know you see him all the time walking, don't you?
Yeah, I see him a lot walking.
Okay. Matt Giaffoni, did you feel, as I did, that in the spring game the wide receivers were often doing long downfield routes? I was expecting more quick hitting offense. What about the practices you saw, Jake? Was the passing game more Smith-like than I had thought it would be?
I think that was intentional. I think, again, there's nothing on tape on this offense. What we had seen was a lot of quicker intermediate routes, whereas on Saturday it was a lot more down the field stuff, and I think that was intentional. I think it was to keep the stuff that Coach Gunderson doesn't want opposing teams to see off tape. The down the field passing game has kind of struggled this season, or this off season, the spring, and that carried over into Saturday, whereas more of their success has been in the intermediate passing game, the quicker stuff, the quick reads that simplify the offense for the quarterbacks and the receivers. And that's my thoughts were that Gunderson was doing that intentionally.
Truth Serum, does OSU ever intend to rebuild the pack, or was it just something they said to win the lawsuit?
In all honesty, I think it was something they said to win the lawsuit. I do believe that the end game here is for Oregon State to end up in that Power 4 with the Big 12.
Yeah, but I don't think there's an offer on the table. I mean,
at the time. But yeah. I do believe the ACC is up next, and they are going to implode. Florida State's taking the ACC to court, I believe. It's a matter of time before FSU, Clemson, Carolina, Miami, and Duke, Virginia potentially even as well, work their way to the SEC or the Big Ten. And I think the Big 12 picks up the scraps of the ACC, Oregon State, Washington State, maybe like a SDSU and like a Boise, and get that third power of the conference. That's kind of where I think this whole thing's heading.
I don't know. I think we're looking at a holistic approach here, Jake, and we're going to do it the Beaver way.
That sounds familiar.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, if rebuilding the pack is what needs to happen, would you aim to rebuild at the minimum of 8, or would you go higher? And if so, how many teams would be in your ideal pack?
To me, 10. I kind of like keeping it smaller. 10, you have 3 out of conference games. Hopefully, if Oregon State does that, they do not schedule any group of 5 teams or any FCS opponents. They schedule schools like, the Kansas States, the Houstons, the things that we've already seen Scott Barnes start to schedule. And then in terms of an ideal conference, I'd pick out Boise and San Diego State from the Mountain West, and then I'd kind of pivot over to the South, the Southeast, get like a Memphis, Tulane, UTSA, like a South Florida, and just kind of expand the footprint of the Pac-12. Because obviously, if there's one thing that's true, it's geographical ties mean jack nowadays. I mean,
but do you think that's going to change though? Do you think that these teams that just jump ship to find a home are going to be like, well, maybe we should have
eventually,
yeah.
But I feel like what's best for Oregon State now is to go out and get the best of the rest if they do rebuild the Pac-12, which I think they have 2 years to do it. That's 2 years. So it'll be interesting. I mean, it's going to be a ton of movement around this.
Okay, so this isn't a damn question. I'm just curious because one of Canzano, and I was on his show 2 weeks ago, and we were talking about marketing. Okay, that Oregon State needs to go all in on a nationwide ad blitz and kind of selling the brand and recreating, not being this like overachieving thing. Do you think that's wise? I mean, would you rather see Oregon State go all in on a blitz of advertising, or save that money and use it to buy yourself into a conference?
I save that money and buy ourselves. I mean, depends on the conference.
Yeah.
But if it's like buying your way into the Big 12, I feel like that will give Oregon State more of a national footprint than the marketing necessarily will. Because, I mean, especially in terms of recruiting, I mean, these kids are going to want to see Oregon State. They're good. They are going to be watching the Pac-12 network. They're going to be watching ESPN, Fox, ESPN2, Fox Sports 1, CBS, and if Oregon State's games are on there with a power conference label, it's going to be more beneficial for the future in my mind.
Yeah, and Connor King 2013 has a great point. If we could go back, marketing has been terrible for years. Absolutely. I think that's one of Oregon, and this has been a big discussion in the lodge too, with Prof posting, the dollars actually being spent and allocated toward football is way lower than the peers, Oregon State's peers. So we could have a whole debate on that, but now it's time. I know Scott Barnes in his email to fans said that the gloves are on and they're fighting. Honestly, I read that and my first response, I said out loud, no, the gloves need to come off. It's time to fight and get the Beavs in a power conference where they belong. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, it's that exactly. I feel like it's time for Oregon State. I mean, it's almost been 8 months now. It actually has been 8 months now since the Pac-12's dissolval, and we really haven't seen any positive news outside of winning that lawsuit. So, yeah, I mean, Oregon State's got the money coming in, the lawsuit money. It's time for them to do some damage with that.
Okay, Jake. Look at that. We made it through another episode of the damn podcast, which is awesome. Are you in midterm mode right now?
Nope, no midterms
Okay.
until week 6. I have one, and then
Okay.
I'm coasting till finals. So it's
Okay.
looking like a
Nice.
relatively light term. So I'm pretty
Okay.
stoked about that.
Nice. Okay. Well, Jake's got Mom's Weekend coming up, and he's got Shasta. So someone has to gear up and like be ready to do some more work because Jake is like doing a kick-ass job with everything. So I'm ready,
Thank you.
Jake. I am super ready. Make sure you're following him at Hedberg Jake on Twitter. I'm at Angie Machado 1 at Twitter. Make sure you're part of Beaver Blitz because seriously, there's so much stuff going on and insight gets dropped in the lodge all the time. But until next time, or we'll be back next time for another episode of the Damn Podcast.